Paul Smith was a poor farmer. He was a good man and a good husband. He worked hard and lived a simple life. One night, Paul Smith took a bottle of whiskey to the field behind his house. He didn't usually drink alcohol. He hated the taste, even though people said it was better than most other pleasures in life. Some people even found the good light after drinking alcohol. Those who experienced the good light could leave this world and for a short time stay between two worlds in a place where death could not touch them. This good light meant good health, long life, happiness, good business. Everyone searched for this light. But Paul Smith never drank until that night. He had no reason to drink, nothing to celebrate, no anger to escape, and no sadness to forget. But on that night, he couldn't fight his desire. When he had finished the bottle, he heard a voice. The voice told him to go to the top of a mountain called the Hill of Sand on the first Monday of the 8th month at midnight. There, he would find a big fire in the forest. He would see a bag by the fire. He had to go to the fire and take the bag before the fire burned it. Inside the bag, he would find treasure and something else, a mandate. He had to follow the mandate exactly as it said. On the first Monday of the 8th month, his wife Clara went with him to the Hill of Sand. They left at midnight, just as the voice had told him, and walked through the forest. They were afraid, but excited at the same time. Paul had told Clara about the voice while he was still drunk. He knew now, as she pushed him forward in the darkness, that it had been a mistake to tell her. Since he had told Clara about the voice, he had no peace. He couldn't focus on his work. His farm and his animals had suffered. Clara wouldn't leave him alone day or night. Even when they were silent, they could feel each other's thoughts. To Paul, the mysterious voice he had heard was like an evil curse. But to Clara, it was something different. To her, it was a way of escaping from their poverty, the way to the good light. Paul wanted the treasure, but he was also afraid of it. He wasn't sure if he should do what the voice had commanded. But Clara's desire influenced him. She decided for both of them. They would do exactly what the voice told them to do. They would find the treasure. She planned. She worried. If the bag had money, how would they spend it? If it had jewels, who could they sell them to? Her fears kept waking him up at night.
The police might ask questions. If there's gold in the bag, what will we do?
She said. The more she thought, the more unsure and doubtful he became.
I may be poor, but at least I'm happy,
he said to her. She called him a coward and threatened to go alone. So they went together on that dark night. At one point, Clara wanted to turn back. She suddenly had a black thought. She could sense danger waiting for them. She called out to Paul, but it was too late. He didn't hear her, didn't answer, and didn't even turn his head. The sky had no moon. Clara could only see his white hat in the darkness. He walked on without stopping, without thinking. He wasn't cautious or uncertain now. There was another Paul inside him, his fingers holding the machete tightly, his eyes focused and fixed. What had caused this change in him? What was pushing him forward? At last, they came to the fire. Paul waited for a moment, silent, thinking. Should they turn around? Could they escape this? Forget it had ever happened? Clara said nothing. Then Paul rushed forward, and just as the voice had told him, he saw an old cloth bag. He quickly took the bag, almost burning his face in the flames, and ran back to Clara. He was curious about what was inside the bag, so he took Clara's hand, and they ran from the place. They could see nothing in the darkness, but they could feel the outside of the bag, bones and something heavier, like metal. Paul opened it and put his hand inside. It was impossible to see, but yes, there were the bones of a man, a machete, and in a smaller bag, a bottle of whiskey and some gold coins. Was this the treasure of the dead? It was all a mystery. Paul found a metal box and opened it. Inside, he could feel some kind of paper, a document. This must be the mandate. The events of later that night have never been fully understood. In the early hours, when it was still dark, as Clara was sleeping in their bedroom, Paul opened the metal box and read the mandate. The mandate told him to kill a man, Richard Grant. Kill. Paul shook with fear. He left quietly and went to a bar to have a drink. He needed a drink now, to calm himself. He needed to think. He was lifting his glass to his mouth when he heard someone say the name of Richard Grant. The sound of that name filled him with hatred. His glass crashed to the floor. He couldn't see. He couldn't think. He wanted this man's blood. He had to kill this man. He took out his machete and rushed towards Richard Grant.
Fight or die like a dog,
He shouted. Richard took out his machete.
Who are you? What do you want with me?
Paul attacked him. There were screams. People were running. Tables and chairs were knocked over as people gathered around to watch. Paul was wild, filled with the strength of 10 men. His machete came down again and again on Richard Grant until the bar was red in his blood. Richard had no chance. Within minutes, he was dead, his body in pieces. Later, Paul was questioned again and again by the judge. Why did he fight with Richard Grant? Paul could not answer. There was no logic. No, they had never met before. No, he was not an enemy until that night. Until the moment when Paul heard his name, the name he recognized, the name that was written in the mandate. Paul was found guilty of murder and sent to prison for 10 years. Clara found work as a servant near the prison, so she could visit Paul every Sunday. After many Sundays, They began to talk about when Paul would be freed.
What are you going to do?
Asked Clara. Paul heard her words again and again in his mind. What are you going to do? What are you? Not us. He looked hard at Clara, like a policeman looks at a suspect, searching for signs. Was she planning to stay in the city? Was there another man?
Tell me, Clara, aren't you coming back with me?
No.
Her quiet answer, her guilt, hit him. For a moment, he could not speak.
All right, but I must go back to our village. You know that, don't you?
Yes, I know, but I don't care what you say. I'm not going with you. I went to see the priest. He told me it was the work of the devil. I'm not going to fall into that trap again.
The priest? Why did you go to the priest?
He asked her.
My boss wanted me to. He was worried about me. He's very kind to me.
Paul knew it then. He knew that he was losing Clara. Prison was bad, like a kind of death. 4 walls. Always the same 4 walls. The desperate faces, the waiting, the long, lonely nights. But losing Clara? No, impossible. There was nothing he could do, though. When the evil light falls on a man, everything goes wrong. He would have to go back to his village alone. The next Sunday, Clara came to visit Paul as usual.
You've come.
He said.
Of course I've come. What do you mean?
Well, I thought...
You think too much.
Laughed Clara. In her mouth, a new gold tooth shone.
And this tooth?
Asked Paul.
Oh, my boss paid for it.
Your boss again. And you paid him back?
Of course. Stop questioning me.
Paul asked again.
Are you coming back with me?
No, Paul.
Short and sharp, it cut his heart.
Well, at least...
He stopped. His voice left him.
At least this way I know. These things happen to people who have swallowed the evil light.
He at last managed to say. His sad eyes grew hard as he watched Clara's face. On his last day, he gathered his few remaining possessions, a few clothes, old and full of holes now, and the torn pieces of a picture of Clara. He had torn the picture up, put it back together, torn it up so many times. But still, he saved the pieces. He went to a hotel to stay that night and filled in the form at the reception with his full name, Paul Smith. Then he left with no explanation. Why? The keys, those large, heavy room keys, reminded him of his prison cell, of hundreds of cells. He walked around without sleeping or eating until his stomach hurt from hunger. But he couldn't sit in the cafe where people stood in line like prisoners, so he walked along the dusty road toward the mountains. He knew something still had to be done. He had killed Richard Grant 10 long years ago. Now he had to obey the mandate's final order. He went to where he had been living with Clara. Nothing had changed. Everything was as it had always been. The trees, the rocks. Paul felt sad and empty, but he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't living. And so, without thinking much, he went to the wise old man, Simon Hammer, for help.
It's no good being in this condition.
The old man told Paul.
You're good for nothing. Nothing goes right. I know why you're sad. As a young man, the same thing happened to me. Yes, I can help you. I can help you understand what you're dealing with. I can advise you about what you have to do.
But I don't want to do what the mandate ordered. I have no enemies,
Shouted Paul.
It's not necessary to have an enemy.
The old man replied.
Yes, but to bury the evil light, this evil light that by accident or pure bad luck has fallen upon me, I know I have to write a mandate. In order to kill someone, I have to put that in the metal box. But I keep telling you, I have no one to kill. It's hopeless. The evil light is inside me, like sand. I cough. I even cough blood. It's in me. It got into me in prison.
As he spoke, he lost control and fell, coughing, to the ground. But the old man was still not convinced and asked calmly.
How do you know it's the evil light?
Paul told him that pieces of the evil light were everywhere. He could see them clearly, moving around him, making him cough and giving him fevers at night.
Then get away from them.
The old man advised, but Paul asked again with anger now.
How can I do that if I have no enemies?
Calm down. I'm just trying to help. And don't blame yourself so much. You've paid your debt in prison for killing Richard Grant. You killed fairly. The two of you faced each other as men with machetes. Richard Grant died, and you lived. If you had not followed the mandate to kill someone, you would have been killed yourself, because it was written.
But Paul was still unhappy.
It would be better if I were dead.
Don't talk like that. In my experience, it's never better to be dead than alive.
What must be done then? What should I do?
You must light the fire of the evil light and write your own mandate and put it into the metal box by the fire.
But I've told you, I can't write this mandate.
Paul, if you let me, I'll show you a way to break the chain of death, the chain that has caught you.
No, Dad. If I break the chain of death, it will only bring me more tragedy, more sadness.
The old man interrupted.
The evil light that's around you is responsible for many deaths. It's time to put an end to it. I've told you that I can show you how to break this chain. Be brave. Believe in me. Write your own mandate. Use your own words. The words of Paul Smith, a man of honor. Then we'll do together what has to be done.
They planned to meet in 10 weeks, when the night would be at its darkest. On that night, they waited, hidden behind some trees. They heard the sound of a horse coming, slowly and carefully. Paul lit the fire. The horse and rider slowly approached the fire. The rider got down with his gun in his hand. A moment passed. There was silence. Then the rider ran towards the fire, took the bag which Simon Hammer and Paul had left there, jumped onto his horse, and rode away into the night.
See how simple it was,
said Simon Hammer, throwing his arm around Paul's shoulder.
Look at you. Already the evil light is leaving you. The sadness is lifting. But have you broken the chain of death? The bones, your machete, the same machete you used to kill Richard Grant, the bottle of whiskey, the gold, were all there in the bag. But you didn't order anyone to be killed. So what did you order instead? What did you write on that piece of paper with your signature, which you put in the metal box?
That one thing I can't tell you. It's my secret.
But you didn't order anyone to be killed?
No, I told you. I couldn't. I have no enemies.
Then what was your order?
I repeat, Simon, that's my secret.
All right, I respect that.
Please forgive me, Dad.
There's no need. Men with secrets are always interesting to me. But let me tell you, you're breaking a chain that has caused many deaths and destroyed many lives.
Simon Hammer coughed, the heavy cough of a smoker.
I'm close to 100 years old. But when I was your age, how old are you? About 30. When I was your age, I fell into the evil light. I was ordered to kill a man, Russell Warden, a man I had never met, a man I had never seen. But one day I was at a market buying a horse, and I heard someone shouting, "Russell! Russell Warden!" My blood turned cold. I could not see or hear. I took out my machete, found him, and ordered him to defend himself or be killed like an animal. He fought, but I killed him. I cut him into pieces. The smell of his blood made me crazy.
But did you bury your evil light with a mandate?
Yes, Paul. There was a man, an Italian, my enemy. My mandate was found by Carl Antonio, and Carl Antonio killed the Italian with his machete. Carl Antonio's mandate was then found by Stuart Hall, who killed Carl Antonio's enemy. And it has continued in this way. Say that you've broken the chain, Paul. Tell me this.
But Paul only sat silently watching the sunrise. He always watched the sunrise, but had never liked the morning. Now, however, freed from the evil light, it seemed to be the most beautiful dawn he had ever seen. Suddenly, he wanted Clara. He wanted her so badly, but he stopped these thoughts as soon as they began. Why should he want her? He knew now that Clara was part of the evil light that had brought him to this place. Because of her, Richard Grant now lay cold in the ground. When the sun had fully risen, he offered Simon Hammer payment for his services. The old man didn't accept money.
I want only to know your secret, the mandate that the horseman read,
Simon Hammer said. But without speaking, Paul Smith walked away. He was walking down the mountain when he suddenly changed his mind, turned around, and went back to Simon Hammer. Walking, then running, shouting,
Simon, wait. I will share my secret with you.
When he reached the place where they had sat, he bent down and whispered in the old man's ear.
Is that true, Was that really your mandate?
asked the old man, smiling, trying to hold back his tears of joy.
Yes, yes, that she too would be torn apart when the picture was torn apart. Now I know, Simon, that when I tore up Clara's picture in prison, it began to free me from her evil power. A woman, when she goes bad, is the worst of all evil lights. Because of this, my mandate ordered the unknown rider to take the picture of the first person he found with an untrue heart, the first unfaithful friend or lover, and tear it into pieces. There are many ways to destroy someone,